Solana is too quiet. One of the most volatile major assets in the world is currently moving just 3.1% a day, high to low, the bottom 3% of its own yearly range. And the interesting part is that 3 different ways of measuring the quietness almost told me 3 different stories. For scale, the median day of the past year moved 5.4%. So a typical day right now covers barely half the ground a typical day covered over the last 12 months. Start with the raw picture. Every number in this episode is taken through the last completed daily session, not a live midday print. On that basis, Solana went from roughly 76.30 to 73.90 across 5 sessions, down about 3%. Over the last 20 sessions it is down roughly 9.5%, from a high near 83 down to a low near 73.40. So this is not a flat, sleeping market. Price is drifting lower. What has collapsed is not the direction, it is the size of each day's travel. Measure 1, average daily range. Take each day's high minus its low, divide by the close, and average that over 20 sessions. Right now that gives 3.10%. Against the past year, that sits at the 3rd percentile. 97% of the past year was busier than this. Measure 2, Parkinson volatility. Same raw ingredients, highs and lows, but it converts them into an annualized volatility number. It reads 37.9%, against a 1-year median of 67.2. That lands at the 2nd to 3rd percentile. 2 different formulas, same verdict. Measure 3 is the one most traders actually look at, Bollinger Band width. It measures how far the bands sit apart, which is really the standard deviation of closing prices around a 20-day average. It reads 11%, at the 5th to 6th percentile of the year. Same direction, but a noticeably less extreme number than the other 2. And that gap matters, because Bollinger width and daily range are not measuring the same thing. Here is the difference, and it is the most useful idea in this episode. Bollinger Band width is built from closing prices. Daily range and Parkinson are built from highs and lows. A market that drifts steadily in one direction can widen its Bollinger Bands even while each individual day stays small, because the closes keep stepping away from the average. Solana is drifting down about 9.5% over 20 sessions. That drift props up the Bollinger reading. Strip the drift out and look only at how far price travels within each day, and the compression looks more extreme than the bands suggest. Neither number is wrong. They answer different questions. One asks how spread out the closes are. The other asks how much ground price covers inside a day. This is where a lot of volatility content goes bad. The scammer version picks whichever of those 3 numbers looks most dramatic, calls it a record, and sells you the breakout that supposedly must follow. I want to be precise about why that is dishonest. First, this is not a record. The lowest 20-session average range within just the past 90 days was 2.86%, below where we are now. Unusually quiet, yes. Historic, no. Anyone telling you this is the tightest ever has not checked. Second, compression does not carry a direction. A quiet market can wake up upward, downward, or simply stay quiet for another month. The imagery people reach for here, energy building up, ready to release, implies the chart is aimed somewhere. It is not. It is a description of the recent past. What about momentum? Solana's 14-period RSI reads 37 on the simple average calculation and 43 on Wilder's original smoothing. I am giving you both on purpose, because the same indicator name can produce different numbers depending on which version your platform uses. Both readings say the same thing, below the midpoint, leaning soft, and oversold on neither. If I had cited only the lower number I could have implied Solana was approaching oversold territory. It is not. When 2 versions of an indicator disagree, that gap is information about the tool, not a signal about the market. So what would actually resolve this? 3 things you can check on a chart yourself. First, watch whether the average daily range starts expanding while price is still inside the recent band, between about 73.40 and 78.70. Range expanding before the band breaks tells you participation is returning ahead of direction. Second, watch whether the Bollinger width and the daily range start agreeing again. If the drift stops and Solana genuinely goes flat, those two measures converge. If they keep diverging, the drift is still doing the work, and the quiet is not as complete as the bands imply. Third, when the quiet does break, take the direction from where price leaves that band, not from the compression itself. Leaving through the upper edge near 78.70 and leaving through the lower edge near 73.40 are two different outcomes, and nothing in the current compression tells you which one arrives. The band tells you where you are. The range measures tell you whether anyone has started moving again. None of those is a trade instruction. They are the observations that would tell you the compression is ending, and which kind of ending it is. So Solana is unusually quiet, in the bottom few percent of its own year, on three separate measures that mostly agree and slightly disagree in a way that is itself informative. It is not a record. It is not stored energy aimed in some direction. It is a market covering less ground per day while slowly bleeding lower. The habit worth taking from this is simple. When someone shows you a volatility reading, ask what it is built from, closes, or highs and lows. Ask whether the number is a record or merely unusual. And ask what the second measurement says before you believe the first. That is the experiment. Subscribe for the next Weekend Lab, and follow the daily market notes at Market Validation Lab on X. The link is in the description. That is where I track whether this compression expands or just quietly continues between episodes.